Välkommen till Direkt-studion. Idag har vi med oss Duncan Moore som är styrelseordförande på bioteknikbolaget Oncology Ventures. Hello Duncan, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, thank you.
Can you tell us shortly what kind of a company Oncology Venture is?
Oncology Venture is a company which is based in Denmark, but it is quoted in Sweden on the Aktietorget. We're a company that has developed a technology platform which allows physicians to target the use of anti-cancer drugs much more precisely in the treatment of cancer. We're able to help develop drugs as well, and we have partnered with a number of biotechnology companies to speed up the development of some interesting new drugs in the field of cancer therapy.
Okay. Does it differ any from a conventional biotechnology company?
I think we're different in a number of ways. Firstly, we are designing very specific clinical trials, which is somewhat different from a number of biotechnology companies. And secondly, we're not really interested in drug discovery, we're interested in drug development. So we license in drugs which we already know have some evidence of efficacy, but we're trying to find a much more targeted patient population so that we can develop them more quickly and more cheaply.
Okay, Duncan, can you tell us a little more about your background?
My background is that I started out as a biochemist at university in the UK. I went on and studied for a PhD in molecular biology at the University of Cambridge. And after that, I set up a molecular diagnostics company. And that led to a career in the capital markets. And I eventually ended up at Morgan Stanley running healthcare equity research for the global bank.
Okay.
After that, I left and got involved in becoming a principal investor. And I have known the CEO of Oncology Venture for a number of years as I sat on the board of the Bank Invest by Venture Funds, which was an investor in one of his early companies.
Can you tell me why Oncology Venture is listed in Sweden and not in Denmark? Because mostly of this company is Danish.
The company, as you correctly point out, is mainly Danish. However, we had connections with a number of Swedish investors, and it became clear that we could list Oncology Ventures successfully in Sweden, which we did.
Okay. Recently, you did a merger with this company, Medical Prognosis Institute. Can you tell us the reason behind this merger?
The origins of Oncology Venture was that it was the drug development arm of Medical Prognosis Institute. Medical Prognosis Institute is the first company which developed the way of screening patients to identify people who would respond to a cancer drug or not respond to a cancer drug. Oncology Ventures was a spin-out from MPI to develop drugs. We subsequently realized that it makes more sense for the two companies to be merged because investors want to feel that they own both the technology platform as well as the drug development capability. So the merger makes sense.
Looking forward, what can we expect from the pipeline of this combined company?
We have 6 drugs in clinical development. Or they will be soon. They will be in clinical development. One is already well into an extended phase 1, phase 2 study, and we're about to start studies on a couple of other products. So we have 6 in total, and the goal will be to develop proof of concept data and license these products to third parties. And we would expect this to happen over the next couple of years.
Can you tell us more about the process when you're in-licensing an asset?
What we're particularly interested in is identifying a drug which has some proven capabilities in terms of efficacy, but generally speaking, not enough to warrant approval in a so-called all-comer clinical trial. By that I mean a clinical trial where all patients with disease are allowed to study. What we want to do is identify patient cohorts or subgroups of patients that are particularly susceptible to the drug, and we use our so-called DRP technology, which is the Medical Prognosis Institute platform, to screen these patients. And so what we're able to do with companies that have assets that are interesting but perhaps not good enough to get a general approval is to refine their clinical trial process to achieve that data set which will result in approval.
Can you also explain the use of the drug response predictor, the technology behind?
Sure. The drug response predictor technology has two broad applications. The first is in the development of clinical data sets for approval of drugs. By that I mean we can screen patients for their susceptibility to a drug, or we can screen them for resistance to a drug. So we can exclude likely non-responders, or we can include likely responders. So that's one broad use. The second use is that ultimately we believe that oncologists or doctors who practice the treatment of cancer will be able to use the DRP technology to identify drugs which patients can respond to. So in short, we can identify treatment regimens that will more likely suit a patient.
Yes. Can you say anything about the competition in this area? Because you're not alone. It's a lot of companies doing research in this field.
Yes, I think that's a very good question. You're absolutely right. There are a large number of companies that are interested in achieving what we're hoping to achieve. What is different about Oncology Venture is that our starting point is that we accept that oncology is very complicated, and that what determines sensitivity or resistance to a drug is inherently very complicated. So we look at total gene expression as opposed to single mutations or single epigenetic switches. This means that we capture far more data, which allows us to make much more sophisticated evaluations of patients' likely response to a drug or not. So although there are many companies that are looking at single mutations as ways of identifying response to a drug or not, we believe that we have a more sophisticated platform, and we believe that we're starting to see that in some of our early clinical results.
Yes. You are early in your research, but can you say anything about when a drug can probably reach the market?
That really will depend on the strength of the data that we are able to generate. We hope to be in a number of clinical trials over the next 12 to 18 months, assuming that they can be completed inside 6 to 12 months. We would hope to have data sets that would warrant drug approval at the end of that period.
Anything that you would like to highlight in that respect?
I think we have two drugs that are particularly interesting in our pipeline. We have a so-called PARP inhibitor, and we have a tyrosine kinase inhibitor. Both of these drugs are currently being investigated in a number of different types of cancer. These are very competitive fields, and we believe that we do have some competitive advantages which will become apparent over the next 12 to 18 months.
Thank you, Duncan, for having you.
Thank you very much indeed for inviting me to be on your show. I very much hope that the signal wasn't too bad.